in Luke chapter number 10. And here in Luke 10, Jesus shows up to Mary and Martha's house. Now, Mary and Martha are sisters. They have a brother named Lazarus. If you will remember, Lazarus was a really good friend of Jesus who then died, and Jesus wept, right? The shortest verse in the scripture, the one that we all can memorize. Jesus wept. And then Lazarus comes back to life. But that's really not what we want to look at today. Today, our focus in our text is going to be on the sisters, on Martha and on Mary, because Martha and Mary both had the right hearts. They both had the right thing that they wanted to do. They both thought that they were handling the situation of Jesus being there in the best way, but they both did it differently. They both did it very differently. They had different approaches to how they were going to be there for Jesus when he showed up to their house. And so I want to look today in verse number 38. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. And she came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? So you have Martha and you have Mary. And Martha is the host, right? It's her home. Hospitality is her responsibility. When you go to somebody's house, they are to be hospitable. They are to host you. When somebody comes to your house, you are to be hospitable. You are to host them. But Martha had an expectation of her sister Mary, and that was that Mary was going to also help. See, I don't have siblings, so anytime I were to throw something, like it's on me. Martha's like, listen, this is great. It's my home. I got my sister Mary. She can help me out. It's going to be amazing. And she has these expectations of Mary to help her to host Jesus. But Mary instead is just sitting at Jesus' feet doing nothing helpful. And Martha, I love this so much, Martha goes to Jesus, the guest, and complains to Jesus and tells him, I need you to do something about this. So Jesus is a guest in Martha's house, and Martha is complaining to Jesus, hey, listen, I'm trying to do all this stuff for you, but Mary's not helping me. You ever gone to somebody's house, they invited you, and then they kind of complained about how inconvenient it was that you were there in the first place? Like, man, I got these dishes to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, gotta clean for days. So I don't hold a lot of things, because I'll be like, oh my goodness, the house is a mess. Like, what have you done? You put that back there. Martha is complaining to Jesus, who she's supposed to be hosting, because Mary's not helping. She says, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Jesus shows up to Martha's house, and Martha is playing host, and she's doing all the things that any good host would, right? She's running around, she's cleaning things, she's picking up things, she's cooking things, she's getting all of this stuff ready, getting it all situated. But Mary, Martha's sister, is just sitting at Jesus' feet, not doing anything, just sitting there. Martha's doing all this work, and Mary's just sitting there listening to Jesus, not helping whatsoever. And Martha becomes frustrated. She becomes upset because Mary is not helping, and she's realizing that she's the only one who's actually doing anything to prepare for Jesus. You ever had something at your house and kind of got a little bit secretly upset because it seemed like everybody else was able to enjoy the party that you were throwing except for you? Like, you've done all of this stuff, you got the house all pretty, you got the house all nice, everything's wonderful, And everybody's having a great time except for you, because you're not even able to enjoy the party, the money, the effort that you've put into it. That's Martha here. She's so frustrated because she's like, I've done all this stuff and nobody's helping. But she was not left out because nobody cared. She was left out because she was so busy. See, we all want to be loved. We all want to be needed. We all want to be wanted. We all want all of these things, but so often in our lives, we become so busy that we miss out on opportunities. We become so distracted by how busy we are that we miss it all. When Jesus showed up, Martha was so busy trying to do everything to prepare for Jesus that she missed Jesus. When Jesus showed up, Martha was so busy trying to get everything together, trying to do it all. She was too busy to notice what Jesus was doing right in front of her. She was too busy to notice the miraculous thing that was taking place in that moment. Yet her sister Mary fully understood everything. She said, I'm not going to allow myself to be distracted. I'm not going to allow myself to be too busy. I'm going to sit at Jesus' feet. But Martha was too busy to notice. And I want to talk to you this morning on that subject. I want to talk to you on the subject, too busy to notice. Too busy to notice. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for who you are. God, we thank you that we get to come to church. We get to hear from you. We get to worship you. God, I pray that you would help us to hear from you today, to receive what you have to say. I pray that you would show us the areas in our lives where we've become too busy to notice what you're doing. I thank you for it in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. Now, for those of you who are adults, do you remember what it was like back in the day when you had summer break? Right? Back in the day when summer break was actually a break. You know, like when summer break was actually something that you got to relax, you got to hang out, when summer had no responsibilities, right? You didn't have schoolwork, you didn't have tests, you didn't have any responsibilities at all. You know what I mean? Like back when you were a child, you get to go on free vacations that are paid for by your parents. Right? You don't have to pay for the vacation, so the vacation is actually a vacation. And then you don't have the stress before you go on the vacation about getting all the work done. And then after you get back from the vacation about all the work you got to catch up on. And then while you're on vacation, you're like, how am I going to pay for the vacation? And then you're realizing, oh no, when I get back, I'm going to have a pile of work, right? It's stressful. It's all these things. But when you're a child, summer break is a break. It's an actual break. Like you don't have to do anything. You do whatever you want. You get to sleep all day. You get to play video games. You get to play outside. You get to go to the park. You get to go to the movies. You get to eat junk food. You get to do whatever you want. And you felt like it was always going to be that way. Summer's the best. It's amazing. And then you become an adult. And you realize that summer is just like every other season, except it's busier, right? Like you become an adult and you're like, summer, it's the same as every other season, it's just more busy. For those of you who have school-age kids, you lost your 8 to 10 weeks of childcare. Free childcare out the window, right? So for 8 to 10 weeks, not only do I have to work, but I got to figure out what to do with my kids. Then I got to work overtime because I got to pay for the kids. It's like all of these things, and you didn't know that you would lose that free childcare that you were going to have. You didn't know that you were going to lose this privilege and opportunity. But not only that, the grocery bill goes up because the kids are in the house, and when they're in the house and they get bored, they eat. So there's all this food being eaten. There's all these things that you didn't understand. And then if you don't have kids, you still have to work. You still have to pay the bills. You still have responsibilities. You're still paying for your own vacations, which I don't know about you, but for me, that takes a little bit of the enjoyment out of it. Having to pay for my own vacation. It's fun still, but it's like when I was younger, I wanted to go somewhere all the time. Now that I'm older, we just went on our first trip in 5 years, because it's like somebody's got to pay for it. So it takes a little bit of the enjoyment. So whether you have kids or not, it's like summer is more busy. There's all these things going on. And as an adult, you don't really realize that summer is two things. It is hot and it's busy. That's it. Welcome to adulthood. Summer is no longer this enjoyable thing. Now it is hot and it's busy. There's events, there's activities, there's all these things on top of the responsibilities that you already have. And in our household, the summer is especially busy because everybody's got a birthday. You got Nicole and Elijah are on August 12th, but everybody else is in June just about. You got Nicole's mom is June 14th. My mom is June 17th. My birthday's June 22nd. My dad's birthday is June 27th, which is actually today. So it's like, happy birthday, Dad. Probably not watching. He's in Utah. But he's on the vacation, and he paid for it, right? And he was like, hey, you want to pay for it? And I was like, we ain't there yet. We ain't there yet. But we have all these birthdays in the month of June, and so Nicole and I are sitting around at the beginning of June, and not only that, you got Father's Day, you have all these things, and we're planning out the month, and we're figuring out all the gifts we got to buy, the dinners we got to do, the celebrations, all these things, because we don't want anybody feeling like they're getting the short end of the stick. Got all this stuff, and all of a sudden, we're sitting there eating dinner at the beginning of June, and Nicole goes, I hate June. See, she ain't even in here today. She's back serving in the kids department, so I can just say whatever I want. Y'all can fact check later. She ain't in here to give me my nose, but she's like, I hate June. Side note, I was talking to her this morning because she got called in because we were a little short staffed back there. So they asked if she could serve, and she was like, oh, yeah, she's like, but man, like, people come up to me and they're like, oh, I missed you last week. You weren't here last week. She's like, I was serving in the kids or whatever. And I was like, don't worry. I'm going to let them know during my story that you're here serving in the kids or whatever. I'm going to let them know. And she said, well, what's your story about? And I said, I'm going to tell them about the time you told me you hated my birthday month. And she said, come on. But seriously, we're sitting there, we're eating dinner, and she goes, I hate June. I'm looking at her offended, right? And she said, no offense, but I really dislike the month of June. And I said, offense taken? Because without June, I wouldn't even be here. She's like, I know, but there's just so much. She's like, it's almost more than Christmas. Like, we're busier than Christmas. We have more things to do than Christmas. We have more stuff to get than Christmas. It's just, sometimes it feels like it's just too much. It's too much. It's like, well, you could take that up with God. I can't help it. I was born on June 22nd. Would you want me to move my birthday? I can't help it. She was like, no. And then she starts backtracking, and she said, no, the truth is, I really just wish we could just celebrate you all month. I like the sound of that. I see you trying to cover your tracks a little bit. But she said, it's just so busy. And she's right. It's so busy, and it's a lot in the month of June. Like, it is a lot. And it feels like at some point that it's just too much. It's just too much. And I don't know if you have any time in your life, anything that you go through in your life where you just feel like it's too much. It's too much. And we can be all spiritual, but we can also talk about some real life things. Like, it's just too much. I've got this bill to pay. I've got that bill to pay. I've got to take care of my kids' tuition. I've got this thing coming up. I got all this. I got too much. I got this on my job. I have this trip I got to take. I have that thing I got to celebrate. I got this place I got to be. I have too much. And for our lives, whenever we allow ourselves not to take inventory and to get too busy, then we do three things. And the first thing we do is we carry too much. We carry too much. And that's the first thing, if you're taking notes, I want you to write down, is that we carry too much. And hear me, church, when we carry too much, we miss important things. Whenever we allow ourselves to carry too much, we miss important things. It said in verse 40, Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Martha was distracted. Jesus is there, but Martha was distracted. She was distracted by all the preparations that needed to be made. She wasn't distracted by some sinful thing. She wasn't distracted by adultery and lust and all these things and all this stuff. She was distracted by the preparations that needed to be made. Why was she distracted? Because she was so busy. And she became so busy that she was now distracted. And her busyness took her attention away from the one that actually mattered. See, Martha was so busy doing what she thought was the right thing that she was actually missing out on what's really the right thing. She was so busy doing what she thought was right that she missed out on the main thing. Jesus was there, but Martha was distracted. And I wonder how many of us in our lives have Jesus there, but we're too distracted by everything else to see what he's trying to do. Martha was distracted preparing for Jesus. She was not distracted by something that was blatantly bad. Right? We can all agree. How many would agree that preparing for Jesus is a good thing? Right? It's a good thing. She was not distracted by something that was blatantly bad. She was distracted by something that seemed to be good, something that she thought was good. And I point that out because in our lives, we know when we're distracted by something that's bad. Right? We know when we're distracted by something that is blatantly pulling our attention away from Jesus. We know that. We can sense that. We can see that. We know when there is a distraction in our lives that we should not even be linked up to, and it's distracting us from what God is wanting to do. That happens. But we're also able to identify those things a little bit easier whenever it does happen. But Martha was distracted not by something that was blatantly bad, but by something that she thought was good. She was distracted by something that she thought was beneficial, something that she thought was helpful. She was preparing for Jesus. But in becoming so busy preparing for Jesus, she missed Jesus. Don't miss that. And becoming so busy preparing for Jesus, getting ready for Jesus, she actually missed Jesus. There are many people who spend their entire lives preparing for Jesus and completely miss him. There are so many people who serve in the church and work for the church and do things over and over their entire lives trying to prepare for Jesus, but in doing all of that, they neglect the family that Jesus gave them. There's so many people who spend their entire lives doing all the things, doing all the studying and all the research, all this stuff, whatever it may be, and they neglect what Jesus has given them to steward. So often it happens, and we don't even realize it because it's things that look good. It's things that look like it's the right thing to do. For Martha, she had to feel like preparing for Jesus was the right thing to do, but not at the expense of giving him her attention. Because Jesus is not moved by your works. He's moved by your attention. He's not moved by what you're always doing. He's moved by your attention. And Mary gave Jesus her attention, but Martha was so busy, and I'd write that down, by the way. It's not a main point, but I'd write it down. He's not moved by your works. He's moved by your attention. Martha was so busy working. She was so busy putting everything into the work to prepare for Jesus to be there that she deprived Jesus of her attention, which is the thing he wanted all along. Jesus said, listen, I don't need all this. I don't need you to do all this. I appreciate it. That's cool. But I just want your attention. I don't want you to be so busy doing everything that you miss what I'm trying to say. We get so busy doing so much, trying to make things happen, God gave us a word, we're trying to make it happen ourselves. And God said, I don't need you to try to work to make it happen. I need you to listen to what I'm telling you to do. I need your attention. So many of us are trying to force it. It's like the Hawks in game 2, man. Forcing every shot, right? We're trying to force it. Doesn't work out. You got to let the game come to you. Jesus is like, listen, man, if the Hawks don't regroup, somebody else going to have to preach next Sunday. Just like, listen, stop forcing everything, Martha. Take a chill pill, Martha. You're doing too much. And I've talked to so many people. I'm just going to get like real, like down and real for a second. I've talked to so many people who served in church their entire lives. And honestly, when somebody comes in the door and you know that they're seasoned and that they've served, man, it's like, as a pastor, it's exciting. Woo, we need people to serve. We need greeters. We need people in the tech team. We need people on the worship team, in the band, in the kids area, youth. We need people serving. That's awesome. But for whatever reason, and I don't understand it, but God has made it to where whenever I see somebody who may be seasoned, he will sometimes speak to me and let me know, don't ask them to serve right now. Don't ask them to serve right now. And as a pastor, it's like, oh, come on. Like, we want to reach people. We need people to serve. And God's like, don't ask them to serve right now. And then as you get to know them, I'm not kidding you, this has happened at least 5-6 times in my lifetime. As you get to know them, you begin to find out that they got so burned out serving for 20, 30 years, being taken advantage of, sacrificing their family, sacrificing their job, sacrificing all these things, to where now it's like they just need to rest. And I believe that's so important that we understand that sometimes all God is looking for us to do is to take a moment to just sit and listen. To just sit and to listen. Now, I'm not giving you a lazy pass. I'm not saying you just come to church. Hey, Pastor Dustin said just sit and listen, right? I'm doing this for the next 10 years. But what I am saying is there are times in our lives where we begin to feel burned out. We begin to feel worn out. We begin to feel like we don't even want to go to church. We don't even want to do that because we got so burned out. And God's saying, you've got to take time to listen. Listen. Jesus said, Martha, you're doing great, but Mary's the one who chose what is better. Mary's the one who took the opportunity to stop and to listen. Because if you don't take this time to stop and to listen and you allow yourself to burn out and get past the point of no return, there is no turning back sometimes. He said you need to take the time to just breathe. Just listen so that you can be replenished, so that you can go 110%, so that you can get back out there and do what I've called you to do. Because God has gifted and called every single person. He didn't call you to just sit for your entire life, but he did call you to make sure that you let yourself be taken care of and be refilled and be replenished so that you can then go out and do what he called you to do. Martha's so busy doing everything, doing all this work. And Jesus says, listen, you need to take a chill pill. You need to relax. You're doing all this stuff. And for many of us, Jesus is here, but we're distracted from it because we're so busy. We're distracted by rules and laws and religion and people's opinions of what we should do. And everybody telling us that you got to do this, and this is how you have to handle it, and this is what you need to do. And we're so busy trying to make everything perfect that we completely miss out on the only one who is. Preaching to myself, we're so busy trying to basically run ourselves into the ground, trying to make everything be perfect, that we're completely missing the only one who is perfect, and his name is Jesus. And he says, if you would take the time to listen to what I'm trying to tell you and to hear what I'm trying to direct you in, instead of trying to solve everything and fix everything and do everything, then maybe you would see me do what I told you I was going to do. But if you continue to go and try to do it yourself, it's never going to happen. And what's amazing is when we get so busy trying to do it all ourselves, we miss out on the opportunities for the people God gave us in our lives to come alongside us and to help us do it better. Jesus is like, Martha, you're doing everything, but you don't need to do everything. You need to take a moment to relax. You need to take a moment to listen. Do you realize that it doesn't have to be a bad thing to be a distracting thing? Do you realize that just because it's a good thing doesn't mean that it is the best thing? Does not mean it is the right thing? Many are distracted and we don't even know it. We don't even realize it. What person or thing is distracting you without you even realizing it? What thing in your life looked so good, but now it's become a distraction? Because there are things in our lives that are inherently good until we make them something bad. Because we allow them to make us too busy and too distracted. There are things in our lives that start out so awesome, but then we allow it to consume us. For instance, your desire to be the best in your company and to move up the chain in your company and to be the one that everybody looks to and says, hey, that's the guy. Hey, that's the lady. That's the one that we need. That's the one I want on my team. Your desire to do that is not a bad desire. That's a good thing. It's called work ethic. It's good. But it becomes a bad thing when it causes you to become so busy that you neglect your family. It's a bad thing when you allow it to become so busy that you haven't even had 5 minutes in the last 3 weeks to spend time with God. I'll speak to you from a personal example. For myself, every week, I spend hours upon hours upon hours upon hours studying, preparing, seeking God. God, what do you want me to say? Okay, how do you want me to say it? Putting it all together, rewriting it, studying it, make sure I know it, right? And that's a good thing. Because y'all don't want me to get up here and just, God's good. Like, you don't want me to get up here and just like waste your time. That's not what God's called me to do, to just waste people's time. It's a good thing to do all of this stuff. Here's where I have to be careful. I have to make sure I don't become so busy and consumed preparing for Sunday that I miss what God is saying to me throughout the week. Because while he does speak to me to get up here and speak to you, I also got to live life. And I also have to make decisions for my household. And I also have to know what should we do here and how should we handle this as a church and how should we handle this at home. And I also got 2 crazy kids at home, right? Like, there's all these things, and I need to hear from God sometimes, right? I need God. I need to know how to handle our 3-year-old turning 4 who thinks he's 17. Like, I need to know. But if I become so busy, focused just on Sunday and what I'm going to preach on Sunday, then I completely miss what God is speaking to me. See, distractions, they come in all shapes and sizes. They're not all the same. Not all distractions are the same. For some of us, it's like we think that we're bettering ourselves, but really it's putting us into a worse position because now it's going to make us too distracted to see what God is wanting to do, which is why we must consistently take inventory of our lives and see, is there anything that is distracting me? Is there anything that has allowed me to become so distracted by everything else that I've completely started to miss what Jesus is doing? Is there anything? Is there any good thing that I have allowed to distract me from what Jesus is doing, from what he's actually saying. Because if we're not careful, then we begin to carry too much. And the next thing we do when we become busy is we blame others. We blame others. It's the summer series, y'all. You don't even know where I'm going. I never even know where I'm going. It's going to get a little bit tight in here, a little rough. When we get busy, we blame others for things that are technically our fault. When we get so busy that we miss an appointment, it's like, well, they held me late at the last one. No, you just forgot because you were so busy, you didn't even put it down. When we get so busy, we begin to blame everybody else for the things that are happening in our lives. Martha did the same thing to Mary. She said in verse 40, she was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to Jesus and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to come and help me. Martha's like, Jesus, don't you care that Mary isn't doing anything and I'm having to do everything? Martha's like, Jesus, I would love to listen to your speech today. I would love to hear what you have to say, but Mary will not let me. I would love to, Jesus, but Mary has made it so that I have to do everything on my own, and I'm not able to actually stop and to hear what you have to say. It's Mary's fault that I'm distracted. It's their fault. Isn't this what we do? It's always somebody else's fault that we're distracted. God, it's my kid's fault that I don't have time to spend with you. It's not Netflix's fault that I binged for 2 hours laying in bed at night. It's my kid's fault. God, it's my spouse's fault that I'm not at church. It's not my fault. My spouse's fault. God, it's my job's fault. It's my boss's fault that I can't serve on Sunday mornings because I'm just too worn out. I've been doing too much, been killing it, been crushing it. It's always like we want to blame somebody else. Martha said, Jesus, don't you care that Mary isn't helping me? Don't you care that Mary has left me to do everything by myself? She's like, I'm sorry that I'm so distracted, but it's because Mary left me. And here's the thing. It's partially true. That is a partially true statement, right? Mary had indeed left Martha to do everything on her own. You know why? Because Mary understood that the work was not what was most important in that moment. Jesus was. She understood that the work could wait, but that Jesus was there now. She understood that everything they had on their shoulders, everything they had on their plate, everything that needed to get done, that wasn't the most important thing in that moment. Jesus was. And what he wanted to do and what he wanted to say and what he wanted to speak was what mattered in that moment. Because hear me, life will always try to make you think that you are too busy to hear from God. Life will always try to make you too busy for Jesus, but only you choose to let it. One more time. Life will try to make you too distracted for Jesus, but only you choose to let it. Mary and Martha are faced with the same exact situation. They had the same decision to make. Busyness or Jesus? Same decision. Busyness or Jesus? Mary could have done what Martha did. Martha could have done what Mary did. Busyness or Jesus? Mary chose Jesus. Martha chose busyness. And then what I love is that Martha then blames Mary for the decision that Martha made. Martha's like, hey, this is Mary's fault. that I'm having to do everything and I can't listen to what you have to say, Jesus. It is Mary's fault that I'm so busy. If she would have helped me, I wouldn't have been so busy. If she would have been there for me, I wouldn't have been so busy. Martha made it all about Mary. She made it all about Mary, that it was Mary's fault because she had done everything. But Martha made the decision herself. And this is a prime example of how two people can be in the same location, see the same Jesus, and one leaves blessed while the other leaves frustrated. This is a prime example of how two people can come to the same church service, can tune into the same church service, and one leaves blessed and the other leaves frustrated. Don't blame somebody else for blocking your blessing when you chose to block it yourself. It's not their fault that you chose to pout while they chose to pray. It's not their fault that you chose to sit there and complain while they chose to say, God, what are you wanting to say to me? It's not their fault that you chose to do what you did. And on the flip side, don't allow anybody to make you feeling bad for getting yours. Don't allow somebody, man, they always blessed. Why they always see God doing good things for them? I'm tired of them. What are they? They must be doing something shady. Ain't no way God is that good to them. It's shady business going on. Have you checked them? Have they had, I need to know. Don't let somebody bring you down just because they don't understand that you said, listen, when God tells me to go, I'm going to go. When he tells me to sit, I'm going to sit. When he tells me to speak, I'm going to speak. When he tells me to shut up, I'm going to shut up. Whatever God tells me to do, that's what I'm doing. That's how I'm blessed. It's not something crazy. It's not some equation. It's not some ritual. It's just saying, God, whatever you say, I'm going to do. And I'm going to listen to you. Don't let somebody bring you down. And don't try to bring somebody else down. We should celebrate each other's victories. We should celebrate the blessings that God does in our lives. We should celebrate each other's testimonies. So I'm going to put a little commercial in here for you. Go to elevationpoint.church/tell it. elevationpoint.church/tell it. I got a $5 Starbucks gift card for the first person that does it, seriously. elevationpoint.church/tell it, and tell us your testimony. Tell us your testimony. Let us know what God did for you so that we can celebrate, so that we can see God spoke to them this way, God worked this way, and he could do the same for me. We got to get to a place where we're not jealous of everybody being blessed, but we celebrate it. If you can't celebrate somebody else seeing God do something amazing, then why would you expect him to do something for you? And if he does, why would you expect everybody else to celebrate it? So amazing. Somebody gets blessed and we're like, meh. Then we get blessed and somebody's like, man. We're like, hey, you're not excited for me? You weren't excited for me. Christians are petty too. We're petty too. We got to get to the place where we begin to pray. I'm not saying be lazy. I'm saying be wise. Begin to pray, God, what is the most important thing in my life in this moment? What needs my attention in this moment? What are you showing me in this moment? For some of us, it's our church. For some of us, it's our family. For some of us, it's our children. Some of us, it's our grandchildren. It's our spouse. Some of us, it is our career. It's our job. We've been slacking. We need to put the attention. But begin to pray, God, where is it that I need to put my focus? Where do I need to be looking? What are you trying to show me? I don't want to have to blame everybody else for myself being distracted. And the last thing that we do is we overcomplicate it. Whenever we become too busy, it's because we've overcomplicated. Said in verse 41, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed. Jesus said, you're worried about a lot. You're worried about many things, but only a few things are needed. Or indeed, only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. Jesus said, you've overcomplicated what was simple. You've made something difficult that was supposed to be easy. You've overcomplicated what was simple. It's not about all the things that you need to do. It's about the one place that you need to be. And that's in my presence. And my question to you today, church, is what have you overcomplicated? What have you overcomplicated so much that it's began to distract you from what God was really doing? What have you overcomplicated so much that it has held you back from what Jesus was really saying? Have you made it more about programs? Have you made it more about preferences? Have you made it more about people's opinions? Have you made it more about the things what have you made it more about than Jesus? Have you made it more about everything? Have you made it more about building a life for yourself on this earth than you have about preparing others for eternity? Have you made it more about building a life on this earth for yourself so much, more so than you have about preparing your own heart for the way God wanted to use you? What have you allowed to distract you? What have you allowed to hold you back? Can't go to church because you're too busy. Can't pray because you're too busy. Can't read the word because you're too busy. Can't serve because you're too busy. All these things that really in the grand scheme of things don't even matter. And we're so busy trying to do it all and accumulate it all and dot this I and cross this T and get this check mark. And we're so busy trying to do all of these things that we're completely missing Jesus saying, just shh. So some of us are like this, like Martha, just blabbing, and Jesus is like, shh. Be less like Martha for a moment, be more like Mary. It's time for you to sit and to listen. But you cannot listen if you're so busy that you have no time to listen. Jesus said, listen, he said, Mary chose what was better. Mary chose what was better. She chose the better thing. And I'm not going to take that away from her. He said, I've been here the whole time. The whole time. He said, I've been available to you the entire time, Martha. I've been available to you the entire time, but you were too busy to notice. You were too busy to notice. I've been available. I've been here. I've been there for you, but you were too busy to notice. What have you allowed to become such a distraction that you're too busy to notice what God was doing? What have you allowed to become such a thing in your life that without you even realizing it, it started to take your attention away from what mattered most, from the thing God prepared you for, from the thing that God created you for? See, if the devil cannot stop you, he'll distract you. Listen, church, that you are an unstoppable force. With God on your side, you are unstoppable. Somebody say, I'm unstoppable. You are an unstoppable force. Type it in the chat, I'm unstoppable. You are unstoppable. And the enemy knows that with God on your side, the only one who can stop you is you. And if he can't stop you himself, and if you're the only one who can stop yourself, don't you think that he would send some distractions into your life to take your attention and your focus away from what you're actually here to do? From what you're actually called to do? We got to get to a place where we use discernment, where we say, is this just a good thing? Or is this God's best thing? Is this just a good thing that the enemy sent into my life? Because listen, he's not going to send you a bunch of stuff that you know, like you don't even want anything to do with it. Like he's not going to send you something that you don't want to be distracted by. He's not going to send you something that's obvious. that you don't even want to mess with. He's going to send you something that looks good. And it looks just like everything that you've been wanting, that you've been believing for. But it's really a distraction to take your time, to take your effort, to take your focus away from what God is really wanting to do in that moment. What have you allowed in your life to cause you to be too busy to notice? It's different for everyone. It's a self-reflection Sunday today. God, what in my life has distracted me long enough? What's caused me to be too busy to see Jesus right in front of me?